Hi, everyone. Really delighted to be here. I have been engaged with Advancing Women in Tech for a while, several years, I think since their first inception. And, I'm really excited to, always connect with people as they are, going through their tech careers. I think we all know that we are creating the future, right, through our work in technology. And it's so important to make sure that the decisions that are being made, especially in product development, are being made through a set of diverse perspectives, not just because diversity is a value in and of itself, but because we get better products. And we create better products. If we want to take any of our products globally, we should have people who have worked and lived in global and emerging markets, right? If we want to, make sure that the people who are using our products, right, have the best experience, we need to make sure that we have empathy for those people. And the best way to gain empathy is to make sure that leaders, decision makers in particular, have a really complex and rich set of experiences from which they're coming. So I'm really dedicated to this and really excited to be with you all. So I would appreciate if you all can. This is going to be a little bit of an interactive thing. So if you can turn on your cameras, that would be awesome. I like to see your faces. I like to see your reactions. I would love to have this be a little bit more interactive. I'm going to share some personal experiences with you. And so I really, it's really valuable to me to see how you respond and to see your reactions. And there will be a lot of moments today where you're going to get together, you have breakout groups, and you're going to share some of your own experiences. We're going to reflect. And we're going to reflect because I think there's not enough conversation that's happening right now about what it really feels like when you're trying to rise to the top and you have a lot further to go than maybe some other people, right? So if this sounds familiar, that's what this is going to be about. So very quickly, if I could have a quick just show of hands, how many of you are in the product organization? So product or design? Product or design? A couple here, 3 hands. And again, if you have your camera off, if you can turn it on, I'd really appreciate it. How many of you are in engineering? In engineering? Okay. Okay. One hand. How about marketing? Marketing. Okay. And how about operations? Operations. Couple of folks. Okay. And then HR. HR, anybody in HR? A couple would be great. Fantastic. I'm so glad you're here. This will be a really relevant conversation. And then, other folks like in support functions. Support functions? Anyone in support functions? And okay, great. And then, finance. Okay, great. And then other. Okay, so we have like quite a few people from a lot of different backgrounds here, which is amazing. A full spectrum of folks really represented in terms of the functions, the teams. And so I think one of the things that we'll be doing today is hopefully talking about how we can support each other and how we can find fellow travelers. So let me get started with my presentation. Here we go. Here we go. Can you all see it? All right. So, the workshop today, and it really is a workshop, I'm just going to be kind of sharing my experiences, sharing some of my learnings in order to get the conversation started. But the really learnings are going to come from you and from your breakout groups. And we're going to have 3 topics that we're going to break out into. I encourage you all to share your real experiences, to reflect on what you have experienced, and to be really authentic. Because one of the hard things, I think, especially in tech, is that we all believe that we're bringing our whole selves to work. But sometimes, there are things that kind of that get in the way or that are unsaid about when you are, when you actually have much further to go from where you've come from to this, high-tech world. So, all right, so let's get started. So this is me as a child. I was born in Eastern Ukraine. I'm a political refugee from Eastern Ukraine. We came to the United States as political refugees when I was almost 5 years old. And, grew up in a very secluded kind of Russian community. And, it's often forgotten, because, it's not necessarily obvious that I'm an immigrant and a first generation refugee, that my experience, isn't one of kind of all of the comforts and all of the possibility of being in technology. And in fact, if you just do a Google search about what the perception is of girls who grew up in Ukraine, it is not tech executive. It is not tech professional, right? It is, generally a pretty derogatory, this is just a Google search, right? Of the picture that you saw in the last slide, right? What is the anticipated future of a Ukrainian girl, right? The Google thinks that the anticipated future of a Ukrainian girl is essentially someone who, is reliant on a man, is pretty demure, is, in a global marketplace of essentially, pretty stereotypical gender relations, right? So my experience in this context is one in which I've always felt that there was a piece of me, right, that had much further to go. There's also obviously a very obvious piece of me, which is female, right, which is also an experience that is oftentimes, creating certain dynamics in the tech environment where, as I'll talk about, I'm the only woman in the room. I'm the only female voice. It feels like there's just an overwhelming sense of masculinity in a particular conversation. And when that happens, and those conversations again and again and again, right, are all kind of this feeling of exclusion, right? How do you keep rising to the top? What are some of the tactics and techniques that we can work on together to really rise to the top when you're from an environment or when you're from a background where you are very cognizant that you have much further to go than some of the other folks around the table. So a little bit of a story. Now that I've told you some of my personal stories, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my professional story. I started my career in global advertising at Leo Burnett. I worked in Chicago, in London, and then in Moscow, in Russia, launching global brands around the world. So especially in Russia, I lived and worked there between 2003 and 2004, and really worked primarily with Procter & Gamble to, as well as, some other global brands, but, to really launch, new products into the Russian market. And what I found there was that, wow, being on the other side of, being in a global company, but being the local person in a global company gave me a completely different perspective on what it means to launch a global product into an emerging market. Because I had to be on the phone now with the folks from Chicago and London to explain to them how things were actually working in the Russian market and why these global strategies that they had developed in the United States and England, were going to be terrible and terribly ruinous for the Russian market. So really interesting experience there. I also have a PhD in cultural anthropology. And I went into cultural anthropology primarily because of that experience, right? Working in global advertising and seeing really on the ground how cultural difference affects economic outcomes and affects our business outcomes, right? And how, there is no such thing as a global strategy. And certainly there's no such thing as a global product, right? In order to create a great global product or a great global brand strategy, you have to actually have deep experience and empathy with local markets so that you can understand how that particular product will be experienced and will be used in those local markets. So anthropology really gave me the tools and the knowledge, really, by reading about cultures around the world, the knowledge to be a better global executive. From there, I went to IDEO, which is a global design consultancy, and I led a lot of the projects that were around digital experience design. So around mobile money, I was one of the first people who developed ideas for mobile money for Visa and for the Gates Foundation. I was actually in Kenya when M-Pesa got really big and really hot. And so I kind of saw that adoption of mobile money on the ground back in 2008. So again, really seeing that experience of how mobile money could take off was incredibly valuable. Built, platforms for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau with Elizabeth Warren, for Genentech, actually around, very specific, PCR equipment and launching, new products that was Life Technologies, but Genentech also with, cancer drugs, right? And how to, create innovative brand strategies around cancer drugs and create platforms, right? To really help patients and doctors communicate with each other. From there, I went to Salesforce and led a lot of product innovation at Salesforce. I led the Lightning Experience redesign, which was the largest redesign of Salesforce's product. I also helped build the IoT cloud as the vice president of the product experience for the Internet of Things for Salesforce. That was back in 2015, 2016, when we all thought the Internet of Things was going to be, everywhere by now. And then I went to AWS and I led the creation of Honeycode, which was a no-code platform for app development. It was AWS's first foray into building a product for non-developers. So that was an incredible opportunity to learn about innovation, learned about a lot of Amazon's processes for innovation, like pair FAQs and developing mechanisms to continue to drive innovation, how to build a 3-year and a 5-year plan around a new innovative product, tons of learning. And then went to Nextdoor, where I was the chief product officer and was brought in to really transform the product experience in early 2018. The goal there was to really shift, 2019, really shift the product experience to be, warmer, more friendly, have a much more forward-looking design, and start to build engagement through new product experiences and new features like groups, like posting news into the feed, weather into the feed, encouraging local government agencies to post more, having local businesses have a place where they could start posting to their neighbors. So kind of transformed a lot of those pieces. Also transformed the product culture by creating a product-led growth motion, as well as defining the product development process for the company going forward. At the same time, I was also, in the blockchain world, doing a lot of work around blockchain and cryptocurrencies, was advising several different blockchain startups, one of which the token went to zero because there was a lot we learned around how SEC regulations. Another one took off. So really, kind of experience this whole world, that's happening around the distributed web. And now I'm at Pendo building a brand new platform around the future of work as the SVP, reporting directly to the CEO. So as you can see, my career trajectory has been very circuitous. I followed my passions, right? And, I have, succeeded in many ways. But what I know and what I see is not only was it not an easy path or a straightforward path on paper, it also was not a straightforward or an easy path in my experience of it. And a lot of that is what I'd like to get into today, right? How do you rise to the top when you are feeling barriers, when you are experiencing certain things that feel like there are big weights, right, on how you need to go? And how do you free yourself from thinking that there's a certain correct path that you have to go down, And in order to succeed, in order to rise to the top, because there really isn't, right? It's all about bringing your specific passions and your specific, talents and skills to the problems that the world is facing. And some of the things we'll be talking about today is, how do you find the people who will support you? How do you create the environments, right, where you can really start to unleash who you are and, don't feel so weighed down? So that's what we're going to get into today. Sound good? Great. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is how to turn being the only into a strength, right? So a lot of times, I know in my career, I've had the experience of being the only woman in the world or in the room for a long period of time. I was on a team for a year where I was the only woman at the leadership table, except for my boss's EA. And that can wear on a person. Because you feel like your voice is less valued. It can wear on a person because, because you feel like, you're constantly chiming in with a different perspective than everyone else, right? Everyone else is sort of sharing the same perspective. Everyone else is coming from the same place. And you're the only one that is constantly chiming in, with a different perspective. Are you being perceived as abrasive? Are you being perceived as confrontational? Are you being perceived as someone who doesn't really know what's going on because you're constantly arguing with people who are, also the experts in the field, right? And that feeling of being the only, I hear again and again and again when I talk to mid-career women and minorities. That sense and that actual reality of being the only, for months or years at a time can be really challenging. So I'm going to talk about how to turn it into a strength. Let me tell you the story of when I was first starting out my career, and I was chosen to attend a senior executive meeting at the ad agency. The senior executive meeting was the global creative review that happened every quarter. And it was the chief creative officer, a bunch of the general managers from around the world. They came to Chicago and they sat in a very dim conference room because we were looking at advertising. And I was there to take notes because I was 23 years old, and they picked a high-performing, high potential person in the agency to meet these men and listen to the conversation about what good advertising looks like around the world. And so, of course, I'm the only person under 50, and I'm the only woman in the room. And we're looking at advertising. And again, Procter & Gamble was one of the primary advertisers. So there was a lot of advertising about, women's, hair and makeup and beauty. And these men were commenting on how women should feel about their hair and makeup and their beauty. And then there was an ad. Kellogg's was also a client. And then there was an ad for Kellogg's Special K. I don't know if any of you remember the advertising for Kellogg's Special K back in the late 1990s, but it consisted of a woman, getting ready for her high school reunion, and she has been eating Kellogg's Special K, and so she fits into this little red dress, and she's thinner, and she feels really good about herself because she's thinner. And the men are going on in the room, these older men, and they're saying, this is brilliant advertising. It hits on a real insight about women and how, and this is really compelling advertising. And I am just, again, I've been listening to this conversation about women's hair and women's makeup and now women's bodies all day. And I had just had it. And I stood up, slammed my hand on the table. I stood up and I said, none of you are the target market for this ad. I am the target market. I am a woman. and I can tell you that this is highly offensive. And it's not that, it's not going to sell cereal today, but think about what the long-term consequences to the brand are when the culture starts shifting, when the culture starts changing. And this type of advertising is no longer okay, right? The brand will be forever damaged. And there was silence in the room. I was asked to sit down, and I did. And then a week later, I got called into the chief creative officer's office, and he said to me, "You really didn't like that Special K advertising, did you?" And I said, "I didn't." And he was like, "You were the only person who has been brave enough to say that. But when I asked other women in the agency what they felt about it, they also agreed with you. So I'd like you to lead a project with 3 other women to figure out what the strategy should be." Right? So we did that. We created a new brand strategy. Kellogg's bought it. We produced new ads called Reshape Your Attitude, and we won awards for them. And it was a highly successful campaign. So how can you think about these moments when you have been the only in the room, and how you can actually turn that into a strength? So I'd like to do for the first breakout, and we have not that much time, about 10 minutes in your breakout session. So let's do that. Actually, do you think we should do 10 or 15 minutes for the breakouts? What do you think?
Let's do 10 minutes since there are a few breakouts.
Okay, great. So I'd like you to meet each other in your breakout room if you haven't met each other, if you don't know each other, and share stories of being the only. Just share stories of being the only, not necessarily a good story. In fact, it's probably better for the first breakout to share a story where it didn't make you comfortable. It didn't feel good. Because one of the things that you'll find is we probably have this in common. Okay, so just go into your breakouts. Do everybody know where your breakouts are?
I am assigning them and am opening up the breakout rooms right now. So here you're being put into them. Great.
So 10 minutes, introduce yourselves and share stories about when you felt you were the only. Those things, are necessary, right? And I would encourage all of us to embrace, right, being really ambitious. And what about likability, right? What happens with likability? Well, one of the things to ask is, who are the people around you who really like your ambition? And this is where it's so important to find what I'm going to call the fellow travelers. And that's what we're going to talk about for the next sort of 2 breakout sessions, is who are the fellow travelers who are around you, right? Who really like your ambition? Who are the people who can, basically support your voice? And how do you actually turn a sense of, owning your ambition and owning your effectiveness, and just putting it out there and saying, like, if people don't like it, that's probably something wrong with them, not something wrong with me, right? So another story that I'll tell about some feedback that I got, which was actually around a direct report of mine. And, and that feedback was that this woman was, causing some friction. She was very abrasive. She was making a lot of her male colleagues feel uncomfortable. And diving into that as a boss, the question I always ask is this a problem with her? Or is this a problem with the other people? Or is this a problem with the organizational culture? That the organizational culture creates such strict parameters for how people need to behave, right? That those parameters are often interpreted, right, much more harshly for women. And that type of culture, when people are saying, like, you have to, really, be a team player, right? When there's a value like teamwork or team player value within an organization, that is often interpreted differently for women than for men, right? Men can be team players and still advocate for themselves and their ideas and argue very strongly. But oftentimes, unless there is a counterpoint from leadership to say, no, 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 if you are interpreting that team player value as a woman cannot argue forcefully in a meeting for her ideas without coming off as not a team player, right? That is something we need to discuss at a broader level, and that's not about her, right? So in the next breakout, what I'd like you to think about is who are the people who like your ambition? And think about especially people in your organization, people who are senior to you. Hopefully it's a boss or somebody who has been a boss. But who are the people who've expressed to you that they really like your ambition, that they like your strong opinions? And then how has that helped you like boost yourself up in your role and in your career? And how do you take that feeling of there are people who like my strong voice, who like my strong opinions, and who like my ambition, right? To start to resolve this likability versus effectiveness paradox, okay? So next breakout for another 10 minutes. Hi, everyone, welcome back. How was that second breakout? Pretty good? Hopefully you found some fellow travelers, some people that you can connect with. So one thing about that breakout in this next one is find the people that you can rise together with, right? Sometimes in our organizations, we feel really alone, especially as we're, trying to get promoted. It feels like a lonely endeavor. But find the people that you can rise together with, the people who will support you on your journey, the people who like your ambition, right, are the people who will rise with you and they will support you throughout your career. So find them. They don't have to be in your function. They don't have to be, you don't have to have anything outwardly in common with them, but there are people will surprise you. Some of the people who have supported me and liked my ambition the most have been men, right? My colleagues who are men, and they have supported me throughout my career. So find those people, stay close to those people. Okay, so the third one, and then we're gonna have a very shorter breakout, is to turn insults and setbacks into power. And, we will face setbacks. We will face insults, right? From being called too abrasive to, to being questioned about your knowledge or your authority, just because you may not fit the mold, or you might not speak the same way, or you might not have the same background, right, as a lot of the leaders who came before you. And here I'm going to tell not my story, but somebody else's story. And I love this story. So a few days after the president nominated her to the Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg received a fax from a member of the Rotary Club in Barnardsville, New Jersey. On June 18th, the writer reported one of Judge Ginsburg's law school classmates had presided over a Rotarian induction ceremony, and during his formal remarks after dinner, the classmate recalled that he and his friends had known Ginsburg by her law school nickname, Bitch. Apologizing profusely, the writer assured Ginsburg that he had asked Rotary Club authorities to ban sexist and scatological statements at all meetings in the future. Ginsburg read the fax silently. Then she exclaimed, "Better bitch than mouse," right? So here we see the sort of the move, right? To basically say, somebody has tried to put me down. Somebody has said that, somebody's called me a name or insulted me in some way, but I'm actually going to turn that into a powerful move. I am going to feel power from that because I have chosen to, right? And I can say in tech, I've experienced that several times, right? As somebody who does not have an engineering background, who's often having very technical conversations, I will sometimes hear people say, well, you're not technical, so you wouldn't understand. And I say, why don't you explain it to me? Just explain it to me, right? With boxes and arrows, because I can probably follow, right? And then I might say something like, oh, you probably don't understand anything about what our customers really want because you don't have a social science background, right? So it's like a little bit of a back and forth, a little bit of a play in terms of making sure that you own the things and the perspectives that you bring to the table, right? And not allow the insults of other people to get to you, and in fact, to use that as a powerful move. So in the last few minutes, I hope we do have time to connect just for a minute or two to talk about what are the things that bring you a feeling of power at work. Is it, a good presentation? Is it a good meeting? Is it an accolade from, a colleague or from a boss? What are the things that bring you power, right? And how can you get more of those things so that you can really feel your own power as you move forward in your career? Okay. Do we have time for one more breakout?
Yes, we do. And moving
Okay.
everybody there now.
Okay, so this will be a short one. So 3 to 5 minutes, okay? Hi, everyone, welcome back. Hopefully you all are learning a lot about each other. It's one of the points here. And so the last thing that we're gonna talk about is a very practical thing, about seeking out reciprocity for faster success, right? So we've talked about the things that make us vulnerable. We've talked about the things that give us power and strength. And now we're going to talk about practically who are the people who will support us as we rise. So a personal experience of mine, I think I mentioned this a few minutes ago, is that, it is really important to have fellow travelers who know you really well, that you can support and who can support you. And it's really important to give first. So who are the people that you really admire? Who are those people that you just talked about who like your ambition, right? And how can you start supporting their career? Because as they rise, right, the people that they like, the people who are there, that they really believe are brilliant and ambitious and can change, the company, the industry, the world, those are the people that they will continue to travel along their career with. So I've been incredibly fortunate to meet these people. In every company I join, I find my fellow travelers. That's the first thing that I do, right? I say, who are the people that I resonate with? Who are the other ambitious, women and, people of color, and, white men are good too, right? Because a lot of them are the biggest supporters of women, either because they have ambitious wives or ambitious daughters, or they are just wired that way as well. You will find people who are your fellow travelers. And the more that you can rise with someone and think about your career as something that a group of people are doing together, the better, the easier rising to the top will be. So my best friend is someone I met at IDEO. She and I are very much wired the same way. And she's, a head of product as well at a consumer company now. She was a top design leader actually at Intuit, and now she's a top product leader at a consumer company. And she and I have always supported each other. Whenever I get a call from a recruiter that I think would be an awesome job for her, I take it, right? And then I say, I'm not interested in this job, but I have the perfect person for you, right? So, and she does the same for me, right? When I get a call again for a board seat or anything like that, and it's not really in my expertise, or for some reason, I can't do it, she is the person, and there's a few people, right, that I talk about as well, who I really support, and I believe they support me, right? So it's much easier to think about your career as a tribe, as people who share the same values, share the same perspectives, who maybe aren't exactly the same, right, in terms of your experience and your expertise, but that who you really trust and connect with. And then you can reciprocally, right, build your career and build your, your rise together. And you might even find that you strategize together in terms of what should your next step be, right? How can you, create a set of opportunities for both of you, or maybe there's more than two, right? I also have a community of a small community of women that I often get together for dinner with, and we share sort of, tips around, what boards are doing and how different companies are IPOing, so we can be all kind of supporting each other in that conversation. So how do you find your tribe, right? And one of the places to look is right here, right? We've got 30 people on the phone. These people share our values because they're all in this workshop together with us. And so for the last breakout and for the last 10 minutes, talk about who are the people that you work with, that you can rise together with. And if you found, a way to support each other, the people that you've even met here, if there's been a connection, just talk openly about that in the breakout as well. But really think about who are the people that you are rising together with, and do you feel supported? If you don't feel supported now, talk about that openly and help that person in your breakout find some support. Okay, so let's do that for each other in this last breakout. How's that? Good?
Yep.
Great. Wanted to kind of take a few minutes. We have a few minutes for Q&A, but I'd also like to ask, was this a different type of workshop than you were experiencing? And if anybody could talk about what they any insights that you might have had by having these conversations. Anyone willing to speak? Julie?
I guess to your question, was this a different type of workshop? I think especially in the virtual format, it's way harder, but I liked how you broke us into smaller groups with specific topic to chat about, and that it was the same groups throughout. So it was kind of well tied together and continuous. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, somebody has their hand up. I can't see your name.
Hi, Rupa here.
Rupa.
Thank you for conducting the session. I have one question for you, which was primarily, can you speak to some of your failures or any examples that you've learned from, and what advice you have for the group?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one of the failures, I'll be completely honest, is, when I talk about who are the people who like your ambition, right? So you can take that a little too far. I would say that there was a moment in which I had a very senior executive in a company who really supported me. And that really emboldened me to push the boundaries further and further and further. And there is a limit that people have, right, in terms of how far you can push them. And, it ended up in kind of souring our relationship, and then kind of me seeing that there was really no future for me at the company in reality, just because, again, it was this great sense of being recognized by a senior executive and really believing that he believed in me. And so kind of saying okay, how can I actually do this more? I can do this more, doing this more. So I think it's also finding a sense of balance, right? That's why I ended in reciprocity, because it's really important to be sensitive and have that sense of even if it's a very senior person, what I didn't realize is that he needed support from me in the organization as much as I needed it from him. Maybe a little bit less, but he's still, right? He there was a lot of criticism that I was directing at him, to be quite honest, because I felt that he valued me, and I felt that he valued my ambition and my point of view. So I felt free and open to criticize, right? But at some point, he really needed me to also validate him and to make sure that I continue to really support him in a reciprocal way. So this is one failure that I really learned from, which is no matter how senior or powerful someone is, they're still a human being. And if they are supporting you, they probably also need support and validation from you as well. And it's really important to remember that. Does that resonate at all, Rupa?
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense if I kind of tie back to, to your point about someone pushing your boundaries. And at some point you kind of need to rethink, what's your limit, and is this what you want? And I think that ties back to something that you kind of highlighted before.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else? Did anyone find a fellow traveler in the groups, or a way that you could support each other?
I think,
And-
hi, this is
Go
Jen. Sorry.
Yep.
So one of the things that I mean, yes, I met a couple, or I've had a chance to connect with a couple of people I haven't been able to connect with. And one of the things they don't know that they've signed up for is that now when we do like leadership development programs or things like that, I think I'm going to want to go get their feedback and see if we're factoring some of the perspectives and experiences they've had. So we're actually actively trying to solve the problem. So congratulations, Katie and Catherine. You don't know you've been signed up for that, but I'm optimistic that we'll be able to continue to collaborate to make some changes.
That's great. And Jen, you're from HR, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And there were a few of you here. Are there any insights or any way in which the conversations evolve that also kind of affect how you're thinking about just the people, right, in the organization and the experiences of those people in the organization?
Well, I think one thing that I've felt, I don't know if other people felt this, I'd be curious if other people experience this in their conversations, but I think there's a world where people have been the only person in the room, understand that they sometimes need to advocate for those people or play that role, and other people who haven't had that experience don't realize it. And so somehow we just need to amplify those stories, because there's a lot of blind spots that people have, and we could probably do better to highlight those blind spots. That was one thought I had but more specifically from an HR perspective.
Yeah, and it's in a technical company, in a tech company, right, where a lot of the conversations are around technology, it's really valuable to have perspectives, that are, from people who are not just imbued with technology, right? And like, how do we even make those perspectives when you're the only one in the room, right, who is really focused on the human dynamics or the organizational dynamics within which your technical product sort of is landing or is serving, right, within an organizational context. How do you even make the space for saying, like, I have a different perspective? I know I'm the only one maybe in the room with this perspective, but how do we make the space to listen to those perspectives as well, right? Great. Any other questions or thoughts to close off?
Any hints on how to identify that tribe piece of it that you alluded to?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is, so one of the things is putting yourself out there and going up to somebody and saying, like, wow, I really love that point of view is usually, it's hard. It feels really vulnerable, but that's usually, I think, the strategy or the tactic that works, right? So when you hear someone say something in a meeting, right, or kind of in a context, especially if they've said something really brave and courageous that you may not agree with it, but you think it was like so insightful. You think it was such a different way to approach the problem. And, you might most people don't take the initiative to just say to people, especially if they got some negative feedback in the meeting, like, hey, I found your idea really interesting and insightful. Like, here's what it made me think of. Can we talk more about this, right? Those conversations are the things that start to show sort of mutual appreciation and mutual reciprocity. And if you identify someone's ideas as being original and particularly insightful and really interesting, how can you the motivation to really help them rise should be there, right? And then as you develop a relationship, right, again, that reciprocity will grow. That's been my experience, right? And it's been pretty across the board in terms of the organizations I've worked at, right? Like, just finding the people whose perspectives I think are really interesting and being very open and honest with them about the fact that I think that they're saying really interesting things, even if they're not getting such positive reinforcement from the rest of the organization.